Yippee-i-oh, sharks! It's time to read another chapter of Leroy Ninker. All right, last time we read about Leroy. I'll show you the pictures so you can remember. Here's this. Boom, ba boom, 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 boom. Poof! There goes the umbrella. I don't know if you remember, but I do. Leroy was alone. And I remember I was kind of frightened for him when I was reading the book. And yeah, so let's see what happens in the next chapter. By the way, I really miss you guys. I feel really funny not having you kind of around me when I read. We'll do our best as we get through this. Chapter 7. The cowboy walked through the dark and stormy world, shouting, "Maybelline, Maybelline, Maybelline!" In his haste to find his horse, Leroy had left Unit 12. Without his boots and without his lasso, he was not at all prepared to go on a horse search, and he had no idea where to begin. You'll notice I'm using different voices throughout this chapter as we read, like you should be doing as readers, but I'll teach you more ways to do it. Patty Lamarck's face appeared before him and said, "Don't forget the compliments, Hank." And the grub. "Maybelline," Leroy shouted, "you are the queen of Yippee-i-oh. You are the most beautiful horse in all creation." He's hoping she'll come back, but no horse appeared. "Maybelline," Leroy shouted. "These will be unending Ooh, I misread that. I caught myself. I better go back and read it again. "There will be unending pots of spaghetti. If only you come home to me." No horse appeared. Leroy thought about Maybelline and her bony spine and her 4 front teeth. He considered her whiskered, velvety nose. He cogitated upon her twitching, twisting ears and how she bent her head over to listen to him. Oh, she listened to him really well. I have a question though. Cogitated, that's a big word. I'm going to go back and revisit that sentence. Let's see. He considered her whiskered velvety nose. He cogitated upon her twitching, twisting ears and how she bent her head down to listen to him. Cogitated. What do you think that means? If you're thinking that it means thinking, you're right. High five. All right. He said, "Maybelline." Into the darkness, "You're the horse for me." The rain came down harder and the wind blew meaner. Leroy's socks were soaked through. This was the worst night of my life, thought Leroy. If there is anything worse than being a cowboy without a horse, it's being a cowboy who had a horse and then lost her. Gosh, poor Leroy. The wind howled and whistled, and then the wind grabbed hold of Leroy's hat and tossed it away. "Dag blither it, you wind you!" Leroy shook his fist at the wind. "What am I going to do without my hat?" Leroy Ninker was now hatless, bootless, lassoless, and homeless. He had never felt less like a cowboy. Oh my goodness, poor Leroy. "I want my horse!" Leroy Ninker shouted into the wild and rain. Not into the wild. Wait, that didn't make sense either. Let me read back. "I want my horse!" horse, Leroy Ninker shouted into the wind and rain. That makes sense. He sank to his knees. Please give me my horse. Please, please, Maybelline, I promise if I find you, I will never leave you again. These words seem so sad to Leroy that he started to cry. You notice how my voice is changing when he's sad? Miss Cara's really not going to cry, but that's how I'm reading it. He started to cry. The wind blew stronger. The rain beat down. The world was very, very dark, and the cowboy was lost. Oh, he was lost. And where was the horse? She was lost too. She was as lost as she had ever been in her life. She was soaked to the hooves, and she was very afraid. She was also tired. She stopped running and held herself still in the darkness. She whinnied. Let's all whinny. No! And then she neighed. Neigh! And then she nickered. Finally, she sighed. Let's all do a big sigh. The horse wanted many things. She wanted the rain to stop falling and the wind to stop howling. She wanted the little man to appear out of the darkness holding a gigantic pot of spaghetti. But more than anything, Maybelline wanted to hear the little man's voice. The horse needed to hear some beautiful words. Oh, look at this picture, you guys. Oh, Maybelline. I'm kind of worried. More pictures. But there's Maybelline. Huh? And there's Leroy Ninker over there. What? Maybelline's going this direction and Leroy's going that. I've got to continue. But there was no little man. There were no beautiful words. There was just darkness and rain and wind. And since Maybelline couldn't think what to do, she started to run again. She ran without thinking or hoping. In the darkness, the horse went one way, and the cowboy, alas, went the other. No. Let's see what happens. Ah! It's the end of the chapter. Let's stop and think about what we just read.